Señoras, welcome to this episode of Service Drive Revolution, where we're going to go through our top books of 2022. I'm Chris Collins, and this is Christian.
Hello, everyone.
That and much, much more coming up right now on Service Drive Revolution. This is the time of year, Christian, where you want to start thinking about your New Year's resolution.
That's right.
You have one?
Oh, for sure.
I know you mentioned that you wanted to drink more in this coming year.
I just think that I don't have enough unhealthy vices. So
that's a bad thing?
Yeah, I just got to catch up to the rest of the world.
And so drinking is an unhealthy vice?
Yeah, I would say very much so. So what do you think about that? Good strategy?
I think you're joking around.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I don't think you're really a drinker.
No, I was in a past life done over it. Doesn't do anything for me.
Oh, you drank in a past life?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
When I was younger.
I'd love to get into your childhood trauma at some point.
Yeah, it's funny that you do that every once in a while. You're like, you want to dig in, but I don't know if it's interesting. It's pretty vanilla.
It's interesting, trust me.
You think so?
Well, the outcome of it is interesting. So
yeah.
Then the cause of the outcome. I have a theory, and this really has nothing to do with service drives or a revolution, but I have a theory that the comedy is a cover for pain.
What if I just actually had a good sense of humor from a very young age and I like to make people laugh?
I have a theory
that
the comedy is a cover for pain.
Okay. That can be your theory.
Maybe I know a little something about that.
Maybe
my comedy is a cover for pain.
Well, I remember it's probably one of my favorite stories. I mean, I've got a few favorite stories of yours, but the when you got voted funniest in the class. So do you remember us having that conversation that I also was voted funniest in class? For you, it was terror. For me, it was like, heck yeah, I earned that.
Yeah.
So it was
completely different experiences.
From the same exact...
Same thing.
Yes.
Different experiences.
So I thought that was super interesting.
I didn't even know that I was nominated.
Yeah, and I probably campaigned.
Yeah. Funny.
Super interesting.
How many books do you think that we have in our library now?
20,000.
I think it's closer to 30.
Yeah. I know that every time that I go to your house, there's a new book there. There's a new pile of books there.
Pile of books.
Yeah.
I bought some collections.
That's the way to do it.
I just got a set of Napoleon books. They're beautiful and incredible. Some of the old books are really cool. So we're going to talk about our favorite books of 2022, but this isn't a, hey, they were released in 2022. This is a, hey, they fell into our lap.
Yeah.
And we read them in 2022. So these are all books that we've read in 2022. So we have an exercise we do internally where we take a book, we assign chapters to different people, and then we get on and everybody shares their chapter. They do a book report on their chapter. And by the end of that, it feels like you've read the book if everybody does a good job, which everybody does. Our team's pretty thorough.
They're getting better, too.
They're doing PowerPoint presentations.
That was a Vicky. She started the PowerPoint. Everybody else just ran with it.
A lot of good things come from...
What do you... before we do that, though...
You want to do one-to-one? Like you do one, I'll do one?
Yeah.
So on our list, too, by the way, we only have one or two that overlap, which is interesting.
We have one.
Especially because we share...
Well, there was also the thing, too, where we're like, oh, crap, I forgot about that one. That happened to me twice when you did your list.
Yeah, I would say there's probably twice as many books that I read that aren't on this list, but would not be relevant to our audience.
Okay.
So this is relevant to our audience.
I have one that's not relevant, but I'll make the connection at the end of the day.
Harry Potter?
No. So you want to go first?
They're in no order whatsoever, except for the order that I remembered them.
Okay.
So there's no order of importance here. The first one that I have was Breaking History by Jared Kushner.
Oh, interesting.
It was really good.
Did you have low expectations going into it, and then it blew you away?
Well,
I don't know if I would expect Kushner to write a great book.
I probably need to say whatever you think my political views are, you're probably wrong. And so when I go into this book, it was more one-sided than I thought, in the sense that he definitely is painting one narrative. It's very hard one line. Does that make sense? There's not really an effort to see both sides in there. But that's not what's fascinating about the book. What's fascinating about the book is his dad, which I knew, but I didn't know the story from his perspective. His dad went to jail when he was pretty young. Do you know who put his dad in jail?
Rudy Giuliani would be my guess.
Oh man, you're so close. Just go across the water, New Jersey.
Christie?
Yeah.
Wow.
So when Christie was helping Trump run for president, Trump went to his father and said, hey, because Kushner's father and Trump are close friends, he said, hey, he wants to help. Is that okay? But he asked his permission to even, and then I always sense like a weird tension between Christie and Trump. That was it. Like that Christie, in the way that Jared tells the story, he was very aggressive with his father, and his father took a plea deal to not go bankrupt, not because he was admitting guilt. That's his story. Who knows, right? Well, we weren't there, but it's interesting. But maybe more interesting than the whole thing is Kushner goes to Harvard. While he's at Harvard, he asks his dad, hey, I want to buy some apartments. He finds apartments that are kind of close to the more desirable part of the campus or around Harvard, buys up these buildings and makes tons of money while going to college.
Smart.
A real estate developer while studying business and all that. Later on, when he's in the White House helping with things, and his thing really was he tried to stay out of the limelight. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how non-politicians going into a political game, like you would sense that somebody like Kushner would have our sensibility for business, in the sense that it is what it is, and you think about things in a different way. You think that things that are left idle don't get better. And then they run into all these career politicians who, in a sense, don't want to make a difference, because then that would mean that they wouldn't have a career anymore.
Yeah.
Like if you fixed it, then you're not needed. And it's an exaggerated version of it, but it's interesting. The other thing that's interesting, and this would be my main point that was interesting to me, is when you go to Harvard, the real thing is you're going with all these kids that are the sons of all these other very influential people. So like when COVID came about, he's calling his old roommate from Harvard who had bought and sold pharmaceutical companies, puts him in a room and gets him to help figure out the vaccine and all that. And so those connections that you make at Harvard or Stanford, really are the upper hand, in a sense that you can call somebody from Bank of America or, whatever it is, and make things happen because being an alumni and having those connections. So it's a fascinating book, I thought. Easy listen too.
All right, I gotta put that on my list. That'll have to be my 2023 list. Okay, so my first one that I'm coming up with is Jocko's book, Dichotomy of Leadership. This was his second book. It was a follow-up to Extreme Ownership. And it was really good timing for me when I read this because I'm a pretty big fan of like the whole extreme ownership. We talk a lot about that we control our own destiny here, and that's what we coach to our clients and everything. And in dichotomy of leadership, I think that the biggest lesson is that you can go too far with that to the point where the people that are working under you, if you own all of their mistakes, then they don't own their own. And I don't know what it is, but I didn't really get that until I started to read that book and get the examples of such. But I think that the way that Jocko writes and Leif too is that they take that, whatever it's kind of the stuff they went through in Ramadi and Iraq and everything like that, and then they immediately apply it to a business case. And I think that that's a really good writing style. But there's a couple of really good lessons in that. But that was the first one I hit that I was like, oh, that was a good book.
The next one that I have is Expectation Effect by Dave Robson, which is basically exactly what it says. It's the placebo effect. What you expect happens, but well written. You kind of create your own reality in a way.
I encourage the placebo effect. I think anytime I can get
Placebo effect?
Placebo.
What about nocebo?
Whatever works. Placebo, nocebo.
You're pro-SIBO?
All I want is the result at the end of the day. But I have no problem with, like, if someone says they want to hypnotize me to get me a better outcome, if someone wants to give me a placebo, whatever it is, I'll take it all.
Okay, on the next show, we'll hypnotize you.
I'm all in. Yeah. You know what's funny is I never really figured this out until recently, but do you know why cats are afraid to climb trees?
Why?
Because they don't like the bark.
What's your next book?
This one's pretty good. I'm going to try this one. That's probably not relevant to the listeners, but I think there's probably a few people that are really fans. But "Sing Backwards and Weep" by Mark Lanigan was a phenomenal book, and I listened to it on audio. I did not read it, the paper version. But Mark Lanigan was what I would call a fairly tortured soul. He passed away not because of his decades of drug abuse, but the COVID bug bought him, I think, if I remember correctly. But the thing that was really interesting about that book was that the way that he describes it. So a lot of that was about heroin use, and the thing that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks was that how he saw things from a heroin addict's perspective is the opposite of what I think the real world is, right? So when he was high, he called that getting well. And when he wasn't high, he called that being sick.
Right.
So I think that that's the lesson in that everybody can use is that, like, you get to determine your own reality and what is real and what's not. And you can be 180 degrees wrong.
Yeah.
But do you remember him saying that? It was like, well, we needed to get well.
Well, what's your favorite Alice in Chains album?
Dirt.
And what's one of your favorite songs on there?
I mean, I could go anywhere. Wood, Angry Chair, Sick Man, all that stuff's phenomenal. So
that's just part of the heroin lingo.
Yeah. So I just thought that was.
By the way, that's an ongoing debate here at Chris Collins Inc.
About
Best Alice in Chains album, Dirt or Facelift. I say Facelift, you say Dirt. We have in the library, we have a signed copy of that book.
I didn't know that. Yeah, at the very least, I've seen you with 3 copies.
I have every book he did, even the lyric one, signed by him.
Yeah.
Big fan of Mark Lanigan, rest his soul.
Good stuff. Smart dude.
My next one is, and I think we did a book report on this one, How to Tell a Story, Moth.
The Moth book, which then always reminds me of the Moth joke.
Not the same, but yes.
Both in their own lines was.
But it's a great kind of insight into how to tell a story. And then the Moth thing is kind of like a little cult where they go around and they have storytelling competitions, and they're online on YouTube. And you can, being able, as a person who wants to be effective, the tool of storytelling might be the most valuable one. So I would encourage everybody to think about being a better storyteller, whether you're coaching somebody or trying to convince somebody or whatever it is. Communicate. Storytelling is a very useful tool.
How much time do you think we spend like curating and kind of massaging and making stories better like that for our content? It's a huge part of it. We talk about stories all the time.
Not enough. We should do it more.
Yeah, it's just,
I think we're just scratching the surface.
yeah. It's clearly though what everybody remembers. Like if we do a 3-hour, 6-hour session and you ask them 2 days later what they remember the story.
You know, I have 2 on here about stories. Let me just, I don't mean to jump ahead.
No, please do.
The other one, did I put it on here? Yeah. Wonderworks by Angus Fletcher.
That guy's a genius too.
So that book was so good, I hired Angus to sit in a room and stare at me for 2 days.
Yeah.
So I could ask him questions. But he's incredible. There's an incredible interview with him on Jordan Peterson's podcast. But his book, Wonderworks, different than The Moth in the sense that, Angus is in that kind of school of everything goes back to like Shakespeare, and he in the Greek mythology, he helped with the leadership content with some of the stories in that we call it the leadership experience. What would we call it? It's not really a workshop, but
yeah,
he helped with that.
He's systematic and scientific all at the same time too. So I think that goes right up your alley.
Yeah, he might be one of the only people that studies story and what happens to your brain and the effects it has on you.
Yeah, he's got a very influential circle of the people that like really appreciate his advice. It's pretty awesome.
Okay, you're next.
I am. Okay. Whew. This was probably when I left this book, I felt the most accomplished of any book I've ever read in my life. It was the Churchill biography.
Oh.
So it was, again, an audiobook. I do a lot more audiobooks than paper books, but I looked it up just to be on the safe side. You want to guess how many pages that thing is? It's the biggest single volume book ever written about Churchill, and there have been over 1,086 Churchill books written. You want to guess how many pages that thing was?
875.
1152.
Wow.
So it was a 45-hour listen.
And you listened.
45 hours. 3 months.
Wow. And worth it?
Every minute of it to understand.
Really?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Churchill.
Who wrote it?
Andrew, and I can't remember the guy's last name. But if you just do Churchill and Andrew book, you'll find it.
Wow.
I probably have it on my phone, actually.
Biggest takeaway?
Biggest takeaway is that sometimes to be the best leader, you have to go against the grain of what everybody else is trying to make you believe. So a couple of examples were that Churchill, very early on in the 30s, pre-World War II, was one of the first ones to say, hey, by the way, there's a crazy dude in Germany, and he's trying to take over the world. And nobody else was listening. He wasn't as big a threat. And so he was one of the first people to do that.
So when he did that, he wasn't in power, right?
No. So
he was sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, he didn't become a prime minister until 1940. So he was on the sidelines. He was in something called the Admiralty for a long time, which was part of the British Navy. So that was really, really fascinating. Also, how early he started his political career, but he probably made more of a name for himself by going against the political machine than by working with it. Like he was a politician, but also not a politician all at the same time, which I thought was fascinating. He was kind of the people because during war times in like the early 1900s, he saw action in World War I. So I think that helped to build his credibility with the common folk. And he made a career by saying what was really on his mind. Also, I got to learn a little bit about the artistic side of him, and probably.
I was going to say one of my favorite Churchill books I have is of his paintings.
Yeah. So I don't know if you'll remember this, but towards the end of his life, he actually he owned a Peter Paul Rubens painting, and it's like something in the mouse. And he didn't think the mouse had a really good, he thought it was like not good enough. So he literally took the painting off the wall and repainted the mouse.
A Rubens?
A Rubens mouse.
I love it. I would totally
So
do that.
cool. But I thought that was really neat. But if you really want to learn about to me, I think that at the end of the day, that guy was a leader. He had, he had a little bit of level of ego to him, but there was a lot of selflessness to the things that he was trying to get accomplished. So I thought that was really, really neat.
Next one I have, we did a book report on, and the book is The Person and the Situation.
It is the only book that you and I both have.
So The Person and the Situation is written by a couple Stanford graduates. For me, let me back up a little bit. The preface of it is written by Malcolm Gladwell, who says basically everything he's done in some way goes back to the book, and that he, when he was younger, made photocopies of the book at the library and has read it many times. The premise of the book is that, is it the person that matters in a situation, or is it the situation? Which has more value? And so if you think about, okay, if Tom Brady was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, would he be the best quarterback of all time?
Probably not.
Probably not. And so it ends up that the situation has way more to do with the outcome than the person. And also that we will misread people thinking they're ethical or good people because they were ethical and good in a less stressful situation. But as soon as there's stress or any sort of pressure or opportunity, people lose their ethics very, very quick. It's a fascinating book. One thing that did surprise me is how much our coaches thought it was really dense.
I agree with him. I thought it was very textbook feeling. I had to look up a ton of words, and I feel like I've got a decent
Maybe I just like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I thought it was fascinating. So, Person and the Situation.
Yeah, it was another one that was pretty rewarding in terms of getting through that was a big deal. And then, so because we've got a carryover, I was going to tell you about a couple that I reread this year that are not on my list because I've read them a long time ago. I reread How to Win Friends and Influence People and 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And then there was a book that I read that everyone tells me I have to read. And then I read it and was not moved in any way, shape, or form. And it was called Who Moved My Cheese?
Simple.
Yeah, so maybe it's just that I got it.
The title tells you.
Yeah. So those were also...
It's supposed to be a fair, like a little kid's tale on change.
Yeah.
What about, shouldn't there be another one on our list? Isn't Change or Die on your list?
Number 1.
So we have 2 that are in common.
Oh, you had Change or Die on your list?
Yeah, so Change or Die by Alan Deichmann.
Yep.
Which is also a fascinating book in the sense that he's studying people that, have health issues because of food, like people that have cardiac arrest because they eat bad and they keep having heart issues, or people with drug addictions, that sort of thing. And even when people are faced with change, they don't change, even if it's going to kill them.
Yep.
It's a fascinating book. We did a book report on that one too. And it's just a fascinating insight into behavior.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, that book was pretty good too. I think Person, Situation, and Change or Die was the lesson that came out of both those books for me is that, like, so many times if you judge, you lose.
How many more do you have?
I'm done.
Oh, you're done? Whoa. Okay, so another one I have is Happy by Darren Brown.
Okay, the magician Darren Brown.
I didn't put it on here, but Darren Brown's very first book on magic.
Hard to get one?
Impossible to get. I've got that and I've read that this year.
It's cool.
Another one that I loved was Death in the Afternoon by Hemingway about bullfighting.
Wow.
Incredible. And Nanka Harris has it's a snack of a book. Like, I think maybe the Audible is 2 hours, called Conscious.
Okay.
About your consciousness and free will. Incredible. One that Jocko mentioned when I saw him in Florida a couple weeks ago, and I ordered it right then, and it is called Military Incompetence by Norman Dixon. Incredible. And the guy's perspective on it is incredible. Like, in that he's kind of apologizing in the sense that, hey, I'm trying to help here, but I know this is gonna
make a couple people look bad.
You kind of gotta unlearn in order to hear this message.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. Let's try to make one of our resolutions that next year this will be twice as big.
Oh, that's good.
Let's do twice as many books this year. I feel like I'm kind of on a roll with books. I've got a system.
Yeah, you go through stuff. You read stuff really fast. One of the things that holds me back, right?
And I'm not a speed reader.
Right, but you know what holds me back?
Is this a joke?
No.
You're dyslexic.
No.
You're a childhood trauma?
When I start a book, I always finish it.
Oh, no. The book works for you, Christian.
Yes.
You don't work for the book.
So there's times that I'll waste time listening to
You'll let
the
a
wrong
$25
book.
hunk of paper or an Audible credit control your time?
Terrible, isn't it?
Whew,
I don't
never.
know what it is. I just feel like I'm waiting for the
By
thing
chapter
to hit.
2, if you don't have me, I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people walk up to me all the time and like, have you read The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F or whatever? Yeah. And it's like, oh my God.
That's good.
Those books are terrible.
But I think maybe one of my New Year's resolutions is going to be that I'm going to stop doing that.
I want to read more history.
I think history is fascinating. I love Revolutionary War stuff.
Here's the thing, everybody. We really appreciate you tuning in. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Service Drive Revolution. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Service Drive Revolution. We're uploading new stuff every day, so make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show, call 8333-ASK-SDR and we'll answer your question on the show. That's 8333-ASK-SDR. For special deals on our books and training, head over to offers.chriscollinsinc.com. Now that's offers.chriscollinsinc.com. I'm Chris Collins, and I'll see you in the next video.